Hey y'all, welcome to the In-Laws We Trust podcast. I'm Ashley.
I'm Brian.
And I'm Kai. And today we're going to be talking about boundaries.
Episode 3.
Let's get it.
Before we get into it, we all asked our partners this question.
Oh, yeah.
So there were these recent fires in Los Angeles. Really unfortunate. That has been happening all around the city. And shout out, first of all, to firefighters, first responders, and we're sending our love to the people who have lost their homes and have been affected.
Yes.
And so in the midst of all that chaos, I packed an evacuation bag just in case, just to be prepared. And so we wanted to ask our partners, what would they pack in their evacuation bag? I think it's really telling what you can put into a bag when times are, really tough. So if you guys want to share what you said and what your partner said.
We had the same answers, actually. We have these letters that we wrote to each other in high school. It was like such a high school thing. It was in our first year of dating, and we wrote one every month for our anniversary. So letters and cards that we've received from all the people, even people I don't talk to anymore, they're all like signs of different times in my life, who I was in different times of my life.
Right.
And also pictures, like photos of my grandpa who passed away. Same with him, his dog, my dog too. Yeah, just the mementos that you can't replace.
I'm very similar to that. For my wife and I, we both said the same thing in terms of, okay, essential clothes for the girls, our memory box, because the memory box that we both have contained similar things like that. So that was definitely going to come with us. Important documents. Course, we have like a little folder that we keep with passports, birth certificates, things like that. Sturdy shoes. That could be something that was I was glad you said that, because who knows what would be happening outside. You're walking the streets, or you're gonna have to climb things, whatever. And then other essentials, canned goods. Charger bank if you have it, batteries and flashlight, and a blanket.
A blanket for sure.
Those were definitely in the bag.
Yeah, so similar answers. Yeah, definitely. Like clothes, of course. And then I think we also talked about why am I blanking? Okay, clothes. Clothes. And then I think with pictures, some pictures, like photo booth pictures specifically, like I know that we have of us too, or like with my friends, because those are definitely irreplaceable. But I do have a lot of photos online, so I was like okay with that. It was more so my 1 terabyte memory drive, because it also has things I can never replace.
Yes.
Oh, hard drives.
Hard drives.
And then we also have a book from the Up movie, where it's like the Our Memories, our adventure book. So it's like a collection of our pictures, and then like tickets and like playbills and things that we've done together. So I'll keep those for sure, especially because of those mementos. And then for me, it was like also a protein bar for hunger. And then I think that was pretty much it. Like things that you just can't replace, things that you're gonna need like on the road. But it's, I think, a very interesting thing to think about, right? When we're faced with that kind of situation.
That's right.
Like what is important to us. And that's a very consistent thing I hear, is memories you just can never replace ever again.
Right.
I agree.
And there was a point where the fire was getting really close, and we did pack up our stuff and go somewhere else. And maybe I was a little more anxious than I should have been during that time. But when I was packing everything, I was like choked up.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking, this might be the last time I come back here. You know, like I may not come back.
Yeah.
And that was really, really scary. Even at my work building, it was getting close there. So I had to
Oh my
like run
gosh.
over there and grab all my materials. And when I was experiencing that, it really made me feel for people that really did lose their homes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And generational homes.
Yeah.
So it was a wake up call too,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
for sure.
for sure. Yeah, it's really awful. I mean, I've seen so many stories of like people who have had their homes for generations, and like especially where we're at now in our like relationships, like these are things like, you know, one day you want to tell your kids when they're older, like, oh, this is what the letters that you wrote or the
Mhm.
pictures that you had, and like one day you want to tell your grandchildren that, or just like the generations to come, and to know that people have lost that, it's like it's so heartbreaking. And
Yeah. Our hearts go out to everybody who, you know, suffered tragedy like this. And, you know, we just continue to hope for the best and keep you guys in our prayers for just getting back on your feet. You know?
Mhm.
we love you, LA.
We
We
love
love
you.
you, LA.
Okay. That was heavier than
Yeah.
Yeah, what a start. I was going to ask a question.
Oh.
And maybe it might
Yeah.
lighten up the mood. What would be one thing that's not considered essential that you would take with you? You know, yeah, you just had to take it if you had the chance.
That's a great question. I feel like Ed and I might agree on this. Our Funko Pop collection.
Oh,
There you go.
Because he has a
yeah.
ton. Like
Really?
he has like $300+ worth of Funko Pops, and I have a lot of Funko Pops that are like out of the vault already, or like are vaulted already.
Yeah.
So mine are kind of hard to find. Like all the ones that I look for have like stopped production for like 7+ years already, and I'm still hunting for one more. And so if I lost those, I'd be really devastated, because I was really,
Oh my gosh.
I went to like a convention and I stumbled upon one at Amoeba Music Store, and I was really happy. And like to lose that, it's not an essential, but to
No.
lose that, I'm like so pissed.
Well,
Well, there's still so much sentimental value attached to that.
Yes.
So
Yes, yeah. One of them he
It's-
gifted me. Like he had to hunt that one down too. So it's like, you know, there's a lot of, that's definitely not essential, but I'd be really upset.
yeah.
no, for sure.
Mhm.
That's beyond like just the face value of it, like the story behind it,
Mhm.
you know, what it took to, you know, get it all together and put that collection together.
Yeah, you know how hard it is to find a Pickle Rick?
Oh, you have one?
I
You have
do.
that one?
And it's like when he has his like he's like equipped with his like weapon stuff after he like disassembled the cockroach and the rat. I don't know if you guys saw that episode, but anyway,
That's
he's
awesome.
like there. He like I think kind of glows in the dark. It's cool. I found it at the convention.
Oh wow,
See.
that's cool.
Yeah.
I'm gonna sound so materialistic,
Mhm.
super materialistic, but I bought a Chanel bag, and I got that when I first started working. It was my gift to myself, as like I finally made it.
Yeah.
You know, I'm successful. I finished school. I love my job, and I know that I would take it too in case I could resell it. Like if I really needed the money, that would give a lot of value.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not materialistic, I don't think, because it does like symbolize all the hard work you've done and the things that you put into it. Like
I agree.
it's like one thing to have like a wall full of them. They'd be like, oh, okay.
Right.
Yeah, if it's like, you know, you have a good number of them and you know it's because you worked for it, then dude, that's like totally understandable.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of in the same like line. It was a toss up, to be honest. It was a toss up, like either my golf clubs or my shoe collection,
Oh.
but I think I would have leaned towards more of the shoe collection, only because, there are a few pairs that they could go sell and could prolong us in the event of a financial disaster too. So that would be, not to say that, like, I definitely was ready to just let it go in case they're just gonna like walk out without them. But if I did have the chance, I would. Every single one, I'm like taking catalog. I'm like, I'm making sure I bring this one, bring this one. All right, we out. Let's go.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Good question. I thought about my shoes too.
You did?
I was like, man, I spent so much money on
I
that.
know,
It's just gonna burn in flames.
I know.
Yeah.
All right. So boundaries.
Back to boundaries.
What are boundaries and why do we need them? I looked it up just for a general definition of what boundaries are. According to Psych Central, personal boundaries are simply the lines we draw for ourselves in terms of our level of comfort around others. It's a pretty general definition, I think.
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
I interpret it as like, it gives ourselves and our partners or our loved ones parameters, on which to like follow, especially when you're having like conversations, like deep conversations, something important to have. And, they may otherwise being difficult could be triggering. So you want to establish a little bit of like a baseline, a little bit of like, I might need, we can't go this far into the conversation because at the end of the day, you want to find resolution, right? So you don't want it to get out of hand. And I feel like those boundaries kind of like help mitigate that.
Yeah.
So yours is more like the boundaries or parameters of like a conversation or
of a thing that can
happen, like, that is happening.
I mean, especially, again, like with me at this point, like I'm gonna come out flat. Like I never knew anything about boundaries up until this, like, conversation that we're having. So looking into it, that was the one thing that most resonated with me, and everything else is basically like, I'm here to learn,
Yeah.
I think it's a lot of how do you love yourself and how do you protect that love that you have for yourself? Because I personally struggle so much with putting other people's needs over my own. And in that way, I was not showing love to myself. So all of my boundaries, I feel they have a pattern where it's like, this is me putting myself first and protecting my peace because it's not worth it. Anyone who truly loves me and cares for me will respect that too.
Right.
Yeah.
And if they can't, then it's just not meant to be, probably.
Totally agree with that.
Yeah.
That hits.
I've known what boundaries are for a while, but I'm still struggling to put them down. I think right now my understanding of boundaries is knowing when to say no and when to say yes that aligns with me. And then also I think part of boundaries is like sometimes you don't know it's a boundary until it happens. So I think having like the wherewithal, like the awareness to be like, okay, no, that didn't sit right with me, or that actually was fine with me. And like being able to define that for future reference and future conversation. Like I've come into situations where I'm like, I didn't realize this was a boundary. Or sometimes it's like, I didn't realize this was a boundary for my partner or for my significant other. But it is when it happens. And so it's like what you do with that information moving forward is also important and informs that boundary. But I think sometimes boundaries are crossed. You just don't realize that they were there. That's the hard part,
Yeah, you learn a new boundary from that experience too.
Yeah, why do you think we need them?
I mean, I got a like textbook answer. It's basically like you know, I think it brings a sense of balance to your relationship, having those boundaries. But you're also like signaling to yourself and to your partner that, hey, I'm honoring your mental, like um, what's the word? Your well-being, your physical well-being, because also I learned like boundaries are also within that realm of like the physical.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, I think it's just you both honor those things. It just allows for the healthy conversations, further building your trust with one another and bringing that balance.
Balance.
Mm-hmm. Balance for sure.
Mhm.
In my experience, I don't think I can live a full life without them. I'll just be trying to please everybody else.
Yeah.
And then on my deathbed, I'm going to think, what did I do in my life to make sure that my needs were met and that I'm happy to go, that everyone that I love and care about felt that way too, and it was reciprocated. Because I went through a time of not having any boundaries at all, and that's when I was most miserable. Yeah. It's only now that I'm more aware of them. I've set a few that I know it needs to stick, and I feel so much better. Yeah. So I know that I have to keep that consistent throughout my life.
And you've also talked about how that's also a form of self-love, right? Like showing yourself love is like allowing these boundaries, like advocating for yourself, right? Which is sometimes hard to do when you don't really feel like you love yourself sometimes.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's when boundaries are not allowed to be crossed, but you allow people to cross those boundaries sometimes too. I think we need them because sometimes, like, if we don't listen to ourselves, we start to build resentment against other people.
Yes.
Huge.
Yeah, you know that thing where you like say yes through like clenched teeth, but really inside you're just kind of brewing. You're like, fuck this. Like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Or I don't want you to do that. But like, then you look back and you let the resentment build, and then you have like negative feelings towards that person because you never, at the first opportunity you had, placed that boundary.
Right.
But what do you guys think about like, putting that boundary down, but also, every relationship is a two-way street. So what are your thoughts too on like when other people are aware of your boundaries? Like, do you think it's also a responsibility for other people to be like checking in on you or be like, hey, are you sure this is okay? Or like, is that part of that relationship? Or do you think it's like really on that one person to be vocalizing what their boundary is?
Between in our relationships,
I think just in general, relationships in general. Like if I came up to you and I was like, hey, I really have something to talk to you about. And then you're like totally occupied mentally with like other things and you're super drained.
Yeah.
And you're like, yes. Should I have also been like, hey, is this a good time to talk? Like, are you in the capacity to receive this right now? Like, should I also check in? I think so, yes. But like, I'm curious as to like what you guys think and any experience with that.
I feel like it varies for every person in my life, really, because everyone has a like level of closeness and understanding of me and me of them. So there are some people where I feel okay to say like, hey, I can't do this right now. I'm sorry. I'm really stressed out. And then there are other people where I'm like, okay, I can push it to the side to be there for them. It's just different for everybody based on their experiences too. And if I know how they are when they're really going through it. So yeah, it's different.
Like in that sense, would it be better for you if the people who you consider close, loved ones and everything like that, but they had a certain level of awareness of your boundaries? Like, would that matter to you more? Whereas opposed to, again, maybe I I could let this one slide because, so and so is maybe not at that capacity. Like, would you rather, are you okay with having it that way, or would you rather like across the board some level?
I would rather have people know, because then even with my answer, right, I'm still putting the other person's needs before my own. Sometimes it's rooted in fear too. So yeah, if I could have everybody that I care about in my life know, like, hey, don't, please. Right. But I also know not everyone would be receptive to that. You know?
That's true.
It's so back and forth. I just feel like with every relationship in my life, it's handled different ways.
Right. I think it's interesting to, like, we consider, because I'm the same way, like the degrees of relationship, right? Like some people I'm more like, hey, this is where I'm at, but especially like with certain people in my life, I'm like, okay, I'll say yes. Like me saying no would be like a death sentence almost.
As I've gotten older and kind of just, I'm assuming more responsibilities, right? Life is changing, and the first thing that comes to mind is like, all right, like what separates me from you? Let's say, like, I'll take my parents as an example. Like, we're both now parents.
Oh,
and I get it, like the son and parent relationship, that respect, that reverence that you have for it, like there's a level of it that should remain, that level of respect. But through my journey, like I start to establish some of these boundaries with them, and kind of like realizing even before that, it was like, these could have came even sooner. It didn't necessarily it dawned on me that, because I feel this certain way, like I'm a parent, like you should be treating me like a little bit like differently. View me as like a little bit more responsible. I got another person's life in my hands, too. You know what I'm saying?
Too.
But that was kind of like did it have to reach that point, or could have been something I could have realized a lot sooner and maybe, enforced. But I would like to think that, especially with you two, that once you get to a certain point and, maybe your life's like responsibility, like elevates and everything, it's kind of like, well, I do have a say in this. You shouldn't tell me one thing and still look at me like I'm a kid, or whatever the case may be.
I really do wonder about that a lot, because, and I'm very curious to also your experience, because I live with my roommate, so how I think my like family could see it as like, oh, she's like a free agent. Like, what does she have to do? Like she's just living there with her friend. Not like I have also some responsibilities, some like projects, some chores, like other things I have to work on. And it's like, it's not that I don't want to be there for my family or not see them, but sometimes it's like I'm barely holding it together. Like, I'm sorry, I can't do this right now. And like the only thing that will give me peace is like, this is how I prioritize my time, because everything else feels a little too chaotic. And I don't know if that's a space for me at the moment for me to feel that peace.
Right.
But then I wonder too, like when my life, like when my significant other and I move in together, like, will it be that way too? Like, will I still be asked to like stay over? Will I still be asked to like, be there for a few days? And like, it's not that I don't like doing that or being there, but sometimes I just don't have like that capacity anymore. And so I wonder if that changes. And then when I have my own family, that's my responsibility next, right? So like, how does that again evolve?
So then the question begs, like, it's like, are you still in a sense like not honoring your own boundary in that situation? Because kind of similar to what I was talking about, but it's like, are you looking for a level of like, okay, this is important now, where it's already important. Like, it really does sound important, like what you've got going on. And that should also, like, that's showing like you're putting yourself first, because it's if you're not taking care of yourself, obviously you're not going to be able to take care of others. You're not going to be able to show up for others. But I'm just thinking, are you maybe still waiting for some of those things to evolve and turn into something that's like, hey, this is more ammo that I got, that now I am like in a place that I'm holding these responsibilities?
Yes. I feel like that's kind of the language they understand. So for my example, right, like I have been working remotely for 4 years, ever since I graduated college. And to a lot of my family members, that didn't really feel real because I was so flexible with it. Like I could be anywhere, which was great. Like it was a really very much a privilege to be doing that. And so it was like, okay, well, if this person's going to be out of town, Ash can dog sit for like the weekday. And it's like, I guess that's fine. I mean, I do like to work at my own office desk because I've created an office desk for a reason.
Right.
But, I'll do this for you because what other thing will I say? That's going to be an acceptable no, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
Not that I don't like the dogs, but sometimes I just like the comfort of my own space.
Yeah, definitely.
And I've, built that space. I paid for that space. It's a whole thing in my mind. And then the other half of me, of course, is like the obligatory, like, you just have to be a good daughter. And like, why would you say no? Like, they're going to die soon. Like, what's wrong with you? That goes also through my mind,
Oh, that wasn't actually verbalized. This is still like, you're like saying this in your mind, right? Yeah. Oh my God, I was about to say,
no, it's like, you're not going to be here forever, Ash.
Like,
you gotta be.
That's like level 10 Filipino parent. Oh my gosh.
No, but I think the same way.
And then now that, exactly. And now
I don't verbalize it either.
It's just in your mind.
Yeah.
It's like one day they're going to be gone and I can't take care of them like this. So I should be doing that.
Yes.
But then ever since I have a regular schmegular job, then it's like, that's language they understand. They now understand, oh yeah, like she can't come here on Sundays. Sunday scaries, she wants to be ready for Monday. I understand. So it has to be in a language they understand, and things like work and family are languages they understand. But friends, creative projects, things that take up a lot of my time now, not really.
No, I get it.
Yeah.
I'm with you on that.
Mm-hmm. I'm learning too that I can't let that feeling bad overpower my own boundary for my inner peace.
That's right.
Because then I'm not showing enough love to myself. And at the end of the day, everybody is an adult here. Like,
that's a good way to put it.
Yeah. Again, from our past episodes, why do I feel like I have to take care of everybody?
Because you've always been the one to do it.
Exactly.
You were assigned that role, whether you wanted it or not.
Mm-hmm. It's that deeply rooted, like, I'm the ate. I'm supposed to be the one to carry as my parents get older, as my grandma gets older, as I have one little sister, I'm supposed to be the model for her. I have to watch out for her when my parents are gone. So they have such high expectations for me, which means a lot that they see me in that light. But at the same time, when I don't meet that expectation, it's like it really hurts them.
Get it.
And I don't ever want to hurt somebody. But again, boundaries, right?
Right.
Boundaries, right?
Yeah.
Woof.
Woof, woof, woof.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds like my household. Like 100%. But I think I think I got a little bit more fortunate as time went on, that I got to avoid having to address it directly, because whether it's, I'm serving the middle between two parties that are not talking to each other and there's venting going along, or, it has something to do with me, whatever the case. Like, I think once I got married, it slowly tapered off. And when I got kids, even more so, significantly. But I would just say, like, maybe it didn't have to get to that point, because I think there is a gift and a curse in that. And the curse for me is kind of like, you may have missed out on an opportunity to, like, address something
Mhm.
that could benefit you primarily, but it also can strengthen your relationship and like open up another door with like having a connection, a different connection with your family.
Mhm.
That's also true. Yeah.
You know?
There's like a plus or minus side of these things.
Yeah.
Ultimately, though, it's especially like depending on how old you are when you receive this information, it can be really damaging.
Yeah.
Because like how you perceive pillars in your life, like especially if it's between parents, or just adult figures, like it's very unhealthy for a child to receive that. And I think like, I think it's just an unfortunate like circumstance of generational gap, where it's like a lot of families have done that to their children. And I think like breaking that cycle is what's important here.
Yeah.
Because no child should feel kind of stuck in the middle of things.
Yeah.
Wow, this is such a heavy episode.
Yeah.
Boundaries.
I know.
So, I mean, even when we like talk about, these family members who cross boundaries or, being in the middle of these like conversations, it kind of is one of the symptoms of codependency, which we would love to talk about here. So, any thoughts on codependency?
Well, what are your guys's what is your definition of codependency so that I have an idea? Because I don't know what it really is.
This kind of like my understanding of codependency as like the inability to do something without the other person. Okay, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. So shout out my boss, my mentor. She's more than a boss to me.
There you
She
go.
has seriously life coach. She's changed my life, really. And I feel so lucky to have that in the workplace. But she introduced me to CODA, which is Codependence Anonymous. It's a free resource where a lot of people who are codependent meet up. There are a lot of different factors to codependency, like what you had said is one, but it can even mean when what you choose to do, it's based off of how other people feel about you or people's acceptance of you. Yeah. So anything that you do that's not influenced by your own beliefs or by some higher power that you believe in, if it's influenced by a person, that can be a factor of codependency.
Okay.
My life has changed. I think I'm way more codependent than I thought I was.
Yeah. So
fuck.
The world is spinning.
Oh shoot.
Yeah. So my boss, she always tells me that she sees so many similarities in me. Like I am her 10 years ago. And she told me about Codependence Anonymous, and I went to a meeting, and they start with this entire, it's like the same paragraph every meeting where it's something like, I acknowledge that you're codependent and that nothing can restore you to sanity besides like, I guess this higher power. And then everyone talks about a reading that they did that week and then their experiences of how they're codependent. And it was all across the board, like everyone who was there. A lot of people would say, I'm codependent on my parents. I'm codependent on my ex-husband. I'm codependent on my sister. It could be anybody because they have such an influence on you and your decisions.
Now that we're talking about it, like sometimes I have a hard time like making like certain decisions or like even sometimes deciding like what to eat or like what to do if I have some free time, unless I call my mom or my uncle or ask my boyfriend.
What?
Like I just have
what you should eat?
what I like sometimes, yeah, if like I'm super indecisive, I'm just like, I don't know if I should just do this or this.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, I
is
do that
a
too.
codependent thing, or is that just kind of like a more like a I would like your opinion thing? But
I
sometimes,
feel like that's like opinion,
Okay.
you know, or maybe
Yeah.
you're just so exhausted you don't want to think about that,
That's true.
right?
Yeah,
but then like things for like
Yeah.
bigger decisions,
I
is
would
it more
think-
like sometimes okay,
Yeah,
interesting.
where it's you know and feel that you're putting someone else's views of you and needs above your own.
Okay,
that's what I was
so
thinking.
there's a
too.
difference between that and then just asking for like relying on other people if you're
Mm.
super indecisive.
I mean, to go to that point of like, if it's a bigger decision, I think you have people in place that you hold in high regard. They provide that, essential guidance. So yeah, it's necessary for them, you go through them to ask them about those things. Um, I don't know necessarily if it's like, oh, I just need like I need an answer, like figuring out what I'm gonna have for dinner or something like that.
Okay,
I don't know. Like, I mean, maybe yeah, it's just kind of like you're mentally like checked out, and you just want to put it on somebody else to like make that decision for you. I don't think that's like.
I don't think so.
it's more so like if that decision. I ask that question because I care about how that person perceives me in making that decision. Is that more where it's like if I chose between Taco Bell and Del Taco, then I was like, Clea Brian, which one do I choose? And if I'm like, man, if I choose Taco Bell, he's gonna judge me. Is it kind of like that?
Yes.
Okay, there you go.
Then you choose the other, or
I choose Del Taco, which I hate.
even one.
He's judging me.
No, I'm not. No, it was just more of the concept itself. It was more of the concept itself. Like, does it get that deep? I don't know if we're using it as an example or not. Like for real. Like, is this real life? Is this real life? Like, or if this was like some sort of.
No.
Figuring out what to eat can
not
be
with
so.
food.
Oh, really?
I mean, no, it could be like it's hard sometimes to make a decision.
Yeah.
But like, I don't think it's for me hitting the point where it's like I think this person's gonna think I'm an awful person for choosing the other option.
Yeah.
But like, I guess like things like clothes, like an outfit.
Yeah.
Be like, I feel like this person will like this more. Like, for example, like if you like, your partner likes this certain outfit more, like would you wear that? But is that also just like
it varies because here I'll give you an example from like let's say you like eating dinner at a certain time. You like to eat early.
Yes.
And then your partner likes to eat later.
Yes.
And you really enjoy eating earlier. It like makes you feel better. You sleep better. The dishes are done already.
Okay.
You're in that kind of disagreement, but then you give way every night to just have dinner really late at night, even though you know what would work better for you without and not having that conversation too that, hey, I really like having dinner early.
Like just completely crossing your own boundary.
Yes, because you're putting that person's needs over. Yeah, with picking your outfit, I feel like it really varies because maybe you want your significant other to be like, ooh, you look good, and that's what you want that night. That's okay.
Like, I know they like this shirt.
Mm-hmm. But putting aside your needs and maybe something that's been like sitting on you for a while, but what's stopping you is how they might feel about it. That's codependent too, because their opinions of you are guiding what you're doing for yourself.
The first thing that came to mind was putting your partner on a pedestal. Like that that was something maybe still I am guilty of. And not to just my own like lack of knowledge, but like people noticed it in me. That was the case. And that could be classified as codependency, right? Like I'm just interpreting it in terms of experience. It's like, you know, if so and so was just like, hey, you know, I want to go out, I want to go party, go this, go here, go there, and I just got off of a shift, right? And it's just like, do I say yes or do I say no? Because I might like crash out and burn, and it's going to be detrimental in the morning. But yes, I'll say, oh yeah, for sure, let's do it. And then it just kind of opens up that door of like, I'm brewing underneath, like, I'm like, oh, should I've gone out? Like, this is too much stimulation. I'm not having fun. Like, oh, like I'm starting to hate my partner for that. And like, you know, I've experienced similar situations like that in the past. And the funny thing is, it's kind of like I still found a way to like rationalize that, hey, you know, they were in the right. You know, like maybe it was on me that I didn't like perk up. I didn't, you know, like try to be better at being present, something like that. You know, I interpreted. I guess I acted in that way because again, it was just like I don't want to lose this person. You know, like I don't want to. I don't want to risk a fight and then we toe that line of like, are we going to break up or are we going to like things like that? And I think that was, you know, a big like no for me. And I learned, you know, what that did for me and how to rebound. But it was never defined as like codependency in that sense, but kind of reminded me like that go hand in hand.
Yeah,
you know?
definitely.
That's rough.
Yeah.
I mean, they have a list. Coda has a list of things where it's like, do you do this? Right? Kind of like a screener almost. One of them is, do you have difficulty setting boundaries?
Yeah.
Are you a people pleaser? So even when I was going through each one, I was like, ooh, ooh.
Yeah. This is how I feel like
yeah. So there's a lot.
Throwing all the punches.
Yes, there's a lot that goes into codependency that not a lot of people know or consider.
Yeah, and it sounds like it's also a degree.
Yeah.
Like a whole spectrum of like how codependency can look like. Because like when you think about, I think when I first think about codependency, I'm thinking about very like codependent relationships, right? Like I can't go to the grocery store without this person, or like I can't like do, I don't know, like drive without this person in the car. Or yeah, I thought that's kind of like the extreme thing. But as I'm like listening to this conversation, it sounds like it's definitely more about putting others above yourself in a way that's not healthy for your boundaries.
Yeah. I agree.
So I'll link the checklist and just the Coda resource in general.
Yeah. That'd be helpful.
Yeah.
Definitely will check it out. As we talk about boundaries, like I want to talk about what our boundaries are, but before we get into that, like what are healthy boundaries? I looked some up. Google said it's about, or actually Cleveland Health Clinic said that it's healthy boundaries help us retain our identity. They prevent others from taking advantage of or manipulating us. They promote healthy relationships, which is redundant. They allow us to be appropriately assertive. They empower us to strive for personal goals and establish empathy for others.
Yeah.
Broad sweeps, but I like the direction it's going.
Yeah.
I like it. The funny thing is, while I was prepping for this episode, and I get like my Thursday newsletters from online, one of the quotes was specifically about boundaries. And I was like, dude, are you like listening right now? But I wanted to share it with you guys. The source of healthy boundaries is love and self-love and self-respect. When you learn to love yourself, you are less likely to put up with people who don't love you back. And that's James Clear. And I was like, you know what? That's kind of like back to that part of the conversation about, you know, your relatives, like our elders and everything like that, could you apply this to them? And like, just like, there's a level of like, could they not love us back if they're not like, respecting our boundaries? But then again, it's like, maybe it's a conversation that needs to be had before you jump to that conclusion. But I can totally see it being the case, like applying it to like other people in your like circle, friends, um, for sure acquaintances, but like,
friends our friends are easy. I think easier to define that, like how they're showing the way that they love you and like how that respects your boundaries. I feel like the generational gap, the cultural gap too, is hard because there are also things that like families can do that definitely show that they love you.
Yeah.
They just don't know how to navigate this particular thing. And that's like, oh, I can't fault them that hard for it because it's something they probably grew up with.
That's right. It's a good way to put
I never
it.
had a time to unpack that.
It's a good way to put it.
I still think though that there's still like space depending on, I think, again, that person, but perhaps there is space with that family member to have that conversation. To be like, hey, like, I know you're crossing my boundary, and I don't think you know that you are, but you are. And it doesn't feel like the ways that you love me or the ways that you think that you're showing that you love me is really like aligning with me. Like, I don't really feel that way. This feels more like you love me because I'm your child, not because I'm me.
Sounds pretty appropriate.
Fuck, sorry.
And that is so, I've never even come to having a conversation like that because I'm so scared. And it goes back to that codependency. Like, I'm letting what they might feel or do dictate what I'm going to do, how I'm going to protect myself and my feelings. So it's such a process. And I guess for me, I'm trying to take baby steps, even with saying, if they're, venting to me about a conflict, just saying, hey, I have to go. I'm sorry. That's already a step for me. But my hope is eventually I'd be able to have a conversation like that. Unfortunately, I feel like I'd only be able to when it really gets to that point. And I've had enough. And that's probably not healthy either, but
we're trying to figure that out, right?
Trying to figure it out. We're doing our best.
Yes.
Like, I'm on the same boat. Like, my thing is like trying, and I've done it sometimes where like if I've been asked to like house sit or like dog sit or like child sit or whatever, like I would say no. I'm trying to find the place where I could say no without feeling guilty and without them feeling like I'm rejecting them. But it's because I need to be in this, like, in a certain space right now.
Right.
Yeah, that's really hard to do.
Do you ever think that sometimes to get to that point, it's like you just have to go cold turkey in a way where you shut it off and, you say what you say, turn around, walk away, and like, just put yourself under like a rock and it'd just be like, you know what, that did happen, but it's out there. Like, do you think it might have to come down to that?
It's funny. I feel like I'm going through a situation right now. So, I think that it has to be articulated fully, on both parties. I don't think I've like spoken my whole piece yet. So there's still a lot of miscommunication. And I'm going to allow people to surprise me because they've always surprised me in the past of how they receive things that I've said or that I've done. But like, if it has to come to that, like, I've kind of made peace with that too, because I think as I grow older, like I realize like I can't keep putting myself in situations that make me deeply uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And that like hurt being there more than like not being there. So
Get it.
Yeah.
I can feel like it's very difficult to like have to navigate this part for you, but through experience and just knowing, kind of like the type of people we are, it's just, again, what you said, people will surprise you. And I think same goes for like those people that, we are afraid maybe to like, have that conversation with or whatever, that if you're going into it, like holding love at the center of it, chances are they're going to find their way to that point too, where they're going to react and, see things from a place of love, and you'll start rebuilding kind of like those boundaries set, and like this is the new direction. I really like feel it's going to go in that direction for you.
Yeah.
Thanks. That's the optimism I need.
Optimism.
Yeah.
Not good at that.
I feel like sometimes time is really what everyone needs. If it's really gone to that point, time away from each other, so that you stopped hurting each other because you're not speaking anymore. Maybe that, it's really hurtful, but both parties are reflecting, and time really does heal, I feel. So even though the idea of cold turkey seems so scary, it might be exactly what we need when it gets to that point of, this is really hurting me, and it's continuously hurting me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just so like, I think the idea of cold turkey is so like antithetical to our a culture. Like you don't cold turkey your family, we're so family oriented. You just keep fighting.
Your family.
You just get the silent treatment for like forever, and then all of a sudden everything's
like
okay.
Everything,
like,
yeah.
That okay.
Like, now we're talking. The fuck?
See, that's an example of how I carry that stuff into my relationship, though. It's like when we're gonna act like nothing happened, but I'm like flipping out in my head.
But then, like, to advocate for the other side, could you think also it's as equally, if not more, uncomfortable for them, that when that period of we're not going to talk, we're not going to say anything, it's not mentioned, and then a few days later, there's breakfast on the table. It's like, hey, come eat. Like that's their way of just like smoothing it over, because again, we're miles down the road in terms of like understanding ourselves and understanding like those dynamics with our loved ones. They're still like at the start, right?
No, yeah, I give them that grace for being at the start.
Yeah.
I think the hard part is like when we act in that way, where it's just complete like silent treatment and then just glossing it over. No one's being held accountable. There's not that conversation. It's gonna happen again.
I agree. Yeah.
Like it's just a band-aid over the main issue. So it's like understandable from like this is where you come from perspective, but it's also just the least productive thing you could do, probably.
So then that's maybe trending in this again, like it is a boundary. Is it healthy or not? We never know, but you know what? Like, nonetheless, that is a boundary right there.
Like, what's the boundary of like taking a step back to reflect and take the time to process and say what you want to say by not speaking and like letting time pass, and the boundary of like just being completely quiet and just like glossing over it.
That's true.
Like, is it the conversation that you have afterwards? If you have a conversation afterwards, like how long should that solitude, that quiet be? And also, like, especially if you don't live together, like, is that sense of urgency there?
Well, I think you would have to, like, look at it from both sides. Like, you have to assess as far as, like, is that person going to be aware, or they are just naturally like, oh, well, we're going to gloss over this and we're not going to talk about it. The responsibility will more likely fall on you to, again, circle back, bring up the conversation, and it's like, all right, we're going to break the cycle. It's up to me, but you don't want to.
Yeah.
Like, I know I don't want to because I'm just like a whole plethora of emotions right there.
Mhm.
But
that's the burden of like being too, I guess,
Yeah.
aware.
Oh,
no, that's the
yeah.
truth.
Having too much information going
That's
on.
that's what it
Yeah.
comes down
Well,
to.
who else?
Yeah.
Who
Yeah,
else?
really. I remember, like, it's just one of those, like, you are faced with a decision. You can engage it and, bring that conversation up and start to hope that it leads to something productive, or
Mhm.
you make peace with it. You figure out a way to make peace with it, and then you move on. Like,
Mhm.
you're going to have to pick one or the other, because if you don't, chances are you're back to square one.
Yeah.
Mhm.
This repeats and repeats.
Do you feel like you guys carry this kind of boundaries or lack thereof into your relationships?
Good question.
Speaking of breaking the cycle.
I try.
Yeah.
Work in progress, like
Work in progress.
everything.
Great answer.
Yeah, I try because I know how much it hurt me to not have those boundaries in the past. And if this is a for life thing, that's the only way that I'll be able to be happy, feel like I'm living that full life, and happily with him too.
Mhm.
Because as the moment I will be putting someone else's needs over my own, it's already gonna feel wrong.
Yeah.
And uncomfortable. And I never want to feel that way in my relationship.
Yeah.
Like, it's supposed to be your safest place. They're supposed to be your safest person. So apart from yourself, because you're supposed to feel safe too.
Yes.
But yeah, it's definitely it's a journey. Yeah.
Understatement.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you
For
that.
sure.
It's still present
Yeah.
in my relationship today. But I'd like to think that it has evolved and kind of, in a sense, like, it's watered down some because of some of the work I've done, the maturing, understanding myself, and then trying again, like attempting at a difficult thing of putting down a boundary, but I'm still trying. And even if it's like half thought, half baked, you try to apply it, there is a little bit of a result, a good result, and you kind of make do with that and see what happens post, application of that boundary. And is it going to be perfect? It's never going to be perfect. And I'm completely aware that, amendments could be made to these boundaries, because my relationship with my partner is so dynamic, and even currently, like, things are so fluid, and there's a point of like growing pains. We're going through it right now.
Oh, yeah.
So coming out of that, I'm sure we can add on to like what we've already established, or try to finally introduce something that, like, I've been holding on to. I'm like, I'm ready to put this boundary because I think you're ready.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that, like, kind of keeping an ear on the floor at like how things are going, and then going gradually in that direction.
Yeah,
But that intention is still there, which
Right.
is really good.
Right.
It all goes back down to that intention, right?
Mhm.
I think it's also a growing process.
Yes.
I think there are times when, like, I see myself carry how I was treated, or my family treats each other. But that's usually when I'm just feeling extra petty. And I'm like, I could do this as long as I can. And that's like not a good way of, I think, communicating. It's just definitely not the best thing to do. And we're trying to minimize that, especially on my end.
Yeah.
But I feel like when it comes to boundaries, it's hard because I already just generally have a hard time articulating my own. And putting them down just for myself, like not even just with my partner, but with like everybody else in my life. That having to tell him that is like the hardest thing for me to do, because there's still always a part of me that just wants to like be the best optimal significant other I could be to this person, which is not fair to myself, right?
Yeah.
And like he's very good about boundaries, like disgustingly good at boundaries. He knows when is a no, and I'm like, why not? But what about the vibes? And he's like, but I'm just gonna be sitting there doing nothing. Like, why would I want to put myself in that situation? I'm like, I don't know, just to show face. And so he's taught me so much about what it's like to set good boundaries, and I really respect him. Nice. I really respect him for that, to a fault sometimes, because I get frustrated. But it's like, you know, being able to, you know, have someone who will reflect that back to you, to be like, for example, like I could be, you know, he could be like coming over and visiting, and then I have work the next day. Right. And then I'd be like, oh yeah, let's just like watch one more episode. He's like, you have work tomorrow. You should go to sleep. And it's like, I obviously have no personal boundaries for myself, because I'm not going to have a good day the next day if I don't have enough sleep. So he's really good about being like, okay, go to bed. We're done for the night. And I'm like, okay. So I'm still like working it out, figuring it out for myself, but he's been a really good example for me. Yeah. Yeah.
And, you know, bringing it back to codependency, I'd even think that some people would wonder if that's codependent, that you now are doing that based off of, you know, what your partner said because your partner feels that's better for you. But I don't think so, you know, because that comes from such a place of love and knowing you so well. And let's say you decided, no, I'm going to, you know, keep doing what I want to do. You'd probably back off and say, okay, well, I told you.
Right? I've done before. Yeah. I've done before. So, no, I feel that.
That's also another layer of being aware of, you know, what's dangerously codependent and what is them just showing so much love to me and me being able to accept it too.
Yeah, that's a good way. Sometimes because they see you sometimes better than you see yourself sometimes, right? Because we're so biased about our own selves. Like, we know so much about ourselves that we can't sometimes see ourselves as opposite as that sounds. So it's nice to have a mirror reflect that back to you. Okay, so since we're talking about boundaries, and usually we do have a segment in the podcast where we have the law. Yeah. I think it's kind of similar. I mean, they're not the exact same, but they're similar. So today we'll talk about what our boundaries are instead of the law. I know you guys look forward to that segment. Don't worry, it's still part of the episode. But really, I want to talk about boundaries. So what are some boundaries you guys have for yourself every day that you keep to yourself? Or you keep for yourself, I should say.
Again, this is going back to what I've said previously about like my boundaries are still kind of like loosely put together. But I have my personal boundary is setting that time for like myself, whether it's in the morning. Mostly it's going to be in the morning. It's like my morning routine, and I have that all like laid out. Sometimes I'm good about it with myself. Sometimes I'm good about it even like when the house is full and I'm like everybody's there, and I'm just like I gotta do this because again, like I know without it, my day is just like all over the place. So it's like my little morning routine. I try to adhere to it daily. And it's just really just about like getting centered, getting like ready for the day, like reminding myself to stay in the moment, and not to take things too harsh or like too hard. Like, you know, breathe in some lightness and some, you know, a little bit of like wiggle room in everything that I do, everything that I'm faced. So that's where I'm at.
Love that. Do you want to share some of your morning routine?
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty like 1, 2, 3. It's like I wake up, have my like glass of water, start off that way. And then I have like my either like my healing music in the back, or I have my church music in the back, just to kind of like set that ambiance. And then I will read or journal, and then start stretching. Like I have a whole like stretch routine that I'll do. Um, and then if I could squeeze it in, I definitely got to get a meditation in. So those are kind of everything right there. I just know like what I was like before that and what I am like with it. And 100% I'll choose like everything that, with that routine, what comes after that. So,
I want to be you when I grow up.
Hey,
That's really good.
That's really good.
Like, it could be like right now.
I know.
It could be right now, y'all.
Yeah.
It could be right now.
It could be right now. Like,
How about you, Kai?
Going off of Kuya Brian, I feel that I do have one thing every morning I do to set the tone for my day.
yeah.
And I'm very spiritual. So I have a Bible plan
Nice.
that I do every morning, because for me personally, I know as long as I give it to my higher power, God, like it's going to be fine. If I try so hard to control everything in my day today, I'm going to lose, and it's not going to be good.
Yeah.
So just having like full faith and trust, and putting like all my worries aside, because I worry so much. I have so much anxiety. And it was only when I started doing that every morning that my outlook on things really changed. And I truly feel like things that used to scare me so much, I'm like, whatevs.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
I love that.
You guys are so inspiring.
Yeah.
That's the way I like that.
That's amazing. Yeah, my boundary with myself is, I think, just to, how should I say, allow future self to be grateful for past self.
Oh, wow.
Specifically
I like
in the morning. Like fixing my bed every morning, that's definitely non-negotiable, because when I go to sleep, it's all nice and tucked in and everything is put together, and that just brings me a lot of peace.
Yeah.
And that's a form of self-love too. So that boundary of like just looking out for future me, being like, okay, like, if I go out, make sure there's like a glass of water next to my table.
Yeah.
That's how I stay hydrated. Things like that. So I think that's a boundary. Yeah.
That is.
That's a really great boundary, because it's also all like these little things that you do for yourself that come with it too.
Yeah.
Wow, guys, this was quite the episode on boundaries. And thank you guys for tuning in.
Yes.
We'd love to hear your thoughts on boundaries too in the comment section.
Yes.
That would be really dope if you guys could sprinkle that in.
Tap in.
Thank you for listening to our third episode of In Laws We Trust. You can follow us on Instagram and TikTok if it still exists.
Hopefully. Come on.
At In Laws We Trust Pod. And you can follow me, Ashley, at looking for Ashley _
At Captain B or at B Archangel Cuts.
He cuts hair.
Yeah.
And at Kylie Kawaii.
Yes.
And don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe for the next episode. And until next time, see you there.